Well, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farlach. It could have been a mistake, said U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday about Tuesday's Russian drone incursions into Polish airspace. Now, Polish officials, including Prime Minister Donald Tusk, however, as well as Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski and Deputy Defense Minister Cezary Tomczyk, emphasized the attack was deliberate. They noted that NATO forces working closely with U.S. troops successfully intercepted all drones, preventing any casualties and demonstrating alliance readiness. Now, to help us understand what this means, we're joined by Professor Tomasz Płudowski from Vizja University. Thanks so much for joining us here on TVP World.
Good morning.
Morning, Professor. So let's start with these back and forth statements. I mean, we've had them now from Donald Trump, President Trump saying, like, look, this could have been an accident, this is a mistake. We have very different information coming from Poland, but also not just from Poland, from other European leaders. So where does that put us in terms of interpretation? What does this tell us about the U.S. response and maybe U.S. willingness to do more here?
Well, if you look at what happened at the very beginning, especially on the part of U.S. President Donald Trump, we had to wait a while before he issued any statement. And what he said in social media, which is typical of him, was "here we go." And it's not accidental, in my opinion, that he used that phrase because it's very non-committal. It's open to interpretation, and he refuses. It reminds me of, I don't know, there you go again, said by Ronald Reagan. He's political hero in a famous debate. So obviously the meaning is very different, but it's very non-committal. It's very non-committal, non-declarative. He does not. It was a way of avoiding basically a statement one way or another and making a declaration. Since words have consequences, he said something that basically could be interpreted in a number of ways. If we try to translate it into Polish, it could mean he's just an observer. It could mean he was expecting this. But generally speaking, he refrained from making any clear statement. And after that, his interpretation was basically excusing President Putin and saying that it was a mistake, like you said. So he's being tested, we're being tested. He's sitting on the fence, trying not to make a commitment one way or another and avoid saying anything that would have serious consequences, because declaring this an attack on NATO would have to result in a serious response on the part of NATO.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was also, as you said, a worry because it took such a long time, I think most of the day, until Donald Trump even responded to this. And as you said, in that cryptic Truth Social post, then the hope was he would say something else. He has, but as you said, it was something very non-committal. So on this front now, I mean, with the Russians observing this, as much as we don't know what's behind their tactics, how are they interpreting this? I mean, this is seen as you said, a sign of non-committal. Would this maybe embolden Russians to do more?
Obviously, they're watching this. I mean, the Western democracy is very open. We're like an open book. We're for the most part, very transparent. It's enough to turn on Polish or American television or radio station and see what happened. This actually did not. If we look for information in the Western media, there wasn't so much of it. There was an assassination, a serious political assassination in the U.S., so attention obviously went there in the U.S. media. But generally speaking, what we're seeing in around the world, I think, is a realization, especially in the elite military circles, that that Russia is testing NATO's borders, and it's testing how, and response, obviously, they're looking at, so they just turn on even your television or our television and can see generals, can see politicians describe in detail what happened, and the Russians are obviously testing the response. Which drones were captured, how many were detected. Maybe they know obviously more than we do about what really happened. and they are testing the response of NATO. And interestingly enough, I think today or yesterday, Der Spiegel added an interesting story to our knowledge or interpretation of what happened, because we were surprised, and Ukrainians were surprised, that only basically a fourth or a fifth of all the drones were shot down. And it turns out that those drones were more dangerous than the others. The others were minor, and these drones were targeting the crucial airport in Rzeszów, which is a hub for Western support for Ukraine. So this makes it sound even more serious. This information was not revealed in Poland. It was revealed by Der Spiegel. And obviously this makes it sound much, much more serious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, also speaking about seriousness as well, I mean, right now we're getting a lot of military observers saying that, they're concerned about this nonchalant attitude of President Trump. But at the same time, I just want to get your understanding and feel and opinion about it. We know that there were obviously Polish jets involved, F-16s. We know the Dutch played a role in this. We had Italian AWACS support, etc. So, I mean, perhaps we don't see it now, but do we know about any kind of involvement and help from the Americans during that operation? I mean, there are American troops on the eastern flank. There are troops in Poland. There are certain assets here. Did the United States play some role in all this, maybe an intelligence sharing of any kind?
We do not know too much, but I think there's a correlation with the fact that recently in the spring, the Rzeszów airport was, the control of the Rzeszów airport was passed over from the Americans to the Europeans, and as far as we know, Russians have much more respect for American troops, and I think they are more likely to target European soldiers, and they are less fearful of a possible retaliation.
Mm-hmm. Speaking also about more American voices that have raised eyebrows, we have also Vice President J.D. Vance, who spoke recently to an American network called One American News. And there he goes on to say very much about, I'm quoting here, "Let's be honest, whether you like Russia or not, whether you agree with its arguments about the origins of the conflict or not, the facts are clear. Russia has oil, it has gas, it is rich in resources." So again, someone who has not been a very strong supporter of Ukraine. This also sends a kind of message, doesn't it? This is going to impact security posture. What kind of damage or impact does this kind of statement have from the vice president in all this?
Well, it sounds like it's a confirmation of what many commentators in Europe have been saying, including myself, that the U.S. under Trump is not willing to take a hard stance against Russia, and I think Russia is slowly testing NATO, slowly testing Europe and seeing how far it can go. And so far, it sees that it can go pretty far. And I think there's probably a relationship. There's probably also going to be serious economic consequences for Poland. For example, less business, right? A rock concert has been canceled by a Western band. And if there's more information about this in the Western media, then Poland will suffer a GDP loss right after. I think it's also not accidental that this happened right after Poland's president and Minister for Foreign Affairs visited the US, and Poland has been invited, well, not officially, but at least the president of Poland has been invited to join the G20 summit in Florida next year. So I think this is going to have serious political, military, but also, first of all, economic consequences if this goes on like this.
Yeah, and I want to come in on that a little bit more because as well, I mean, they're reopened now, but for a short time we did have the airport closures in the airspace, also a Warsaw airport, that's a massive one in the region, also Rzeszów. Tell us a bit more about the medium to long-term economic consequences if we have the kind of effect from these kind of drone incursions. How will that affect tourism midterm? How will that affect investment midterm?
Well, if depending on what happens, what the response is, and if accidents like that or events, occurrences like that happen, because according to us, this wasn't an incident, it wasn't by mistake. and according to Trump, it was a mistake. I think also the official stand of Mark Rutte is that it doesn't matter if it was a mistake or it wasn't. It happened. So if it continues, obviously Poland will suffer. Investment will be lower, and first tourism would be much lower. And Poland is enjoying a high profile, being on the covers of The Economist and other magazines, and being asked to join G20, like I said, becoming one of the top 20 economies in the world. So this can take a toll on our economy, and it can have also serious consequences for the citizens, for employment, for GDP, and Poland's stand internationally. This is a part of psychological war on the part of Putin, trying to scare people. So first of all, in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, as we like to call ourselves, being part of the West more than former Eastern Bloc or Eastern Europe. But this is a very potentially serious situation, and it's unfortunate that American president is not doing much more. And what we heard from Vance, sounded like a justification, or it makes us remember the West saying we're not going to die for Gdańsk, right, during the Second World War. So,
but at the same time, I want to just say, because we're conscious of the time, I do have to say that, of course, we hear one thing from the president. We'll see what happens the other day. But at the same time, I think there is a type of resilience. We've seen NATO cooperate on a high level. We'll see what that actually translates to in the next days. And talk about resilience, I'm also reminded of nations like South Korea, Taiwan, still vigilant against their adversaries, but still the economy continues. So we'll have to see how that plays out in Poland. We'll close it there. Thank you so much, Professor Płudowski. Thank you so much for all that. Appreciate it. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks here on TVP World, but much more coming up, so don't go away.